Let's give them something to talk about. I see the energy running out. I got a planet to run around. Okay, okay. You ain't do nothing but run your mouth. No, I don't want to be humble now. You doubted me, nothing to talk about.
All right, we're live. And are we live in all the right places?
I believe so.
Yeah. Facebook group. And,
yeah, Facebook and PR's YouTube.
And YouTube. We got, all right. So Richard Blake's here with us today. Diablo member Richard Blake. But
Thanks for coming on, man.
He's far more famous and educated, I think, than both of us.
Doubt it.
We'll try not to talk too much. And let the smart guy talk.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what he's got to say.
But we wanted to open up with the talk about the semifinals, because that was kind of a
little recap from the weekend.
Yeah, a little recap, because everybody's talking. Well, everybody that's interested in the CrossFit Games age group athletes. So I don't know,
or CrossFit drama,
But Diablo has had one athlete, my wife, Yvonne, who looks like right now unofficially is qualified for the games in the top 10, which is outstanding. This will be her. And she said it. She goes, "Are you talking about me in the email this week?" I said, "Yes." She goes, "Will you please make sure that it says 6 CrossFit Games athletes?"
Get it right.
Yeah, because I got it wrong apparently the week before.
What did you say the week before?
I said 5.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry. Or the week before, 2 weeks. I don't know. I said something.
So this would be the 6th, not the 5th.
Yeah, fifth time.
She's 5 down.
She's 5 down.
Her sixth,
and she competed once on a team.
That's
very
right.
Early
That's
on.
right. That was what 2008.
I think
that was 2008.
Yeah, 2008.
Just from the looks of those pictures.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those are great pictures. Those the back in the day. That was huge. That was down at Aromas where they did that competition. Richard, how long have you been affiliated with CrossFit or associated with CrossFit or CrossFitting?
About 7 years. I started out in London and then bought a CrossFit affiliate down in Mission Viejo, Orange County. Ran that for a little while and then had to sell it for family reasons. And prior to that, I was doing like fitness modeling and being in men's health and things like that, and just trying to look the part. And then I thought, well, maybe I should actually try and lift some heavy weights.
Play the part a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's one of those things as an affiliate owner, you discover in the whole process of doing things, but you're the kind of the last guy to know. And affiliate owners like to, one of the things that's challenging for affiliate owners these days is finding qualified people to coach class, right? There's a shortage. If anybody's interested out there and thinking about getting their certification, there's a shortage of CrossFit coaches among affiliates. Affiliates are struggling to find it. And so now, a year after Richard's been here, I find out that he's a level 2 and he's been an affiliate owner as I was doing the data gathering for this podcast, because I know about his breathwork stuff. And I follow him on Instagram, and I don't know. I guess I just didn't dig deep enough in the past.
Keeping it like, wait a minute,
right? Wait a minute.
I think I did tell you the first time.
Yeah, you probably. Yeah. Okay,
I remember that came up in our conversation.
All right, so now I'm 60. All right, so now that's the 60-year-old thing. You probably did tell me, son of a bitch. So, but I'm like, oh man, okay, all right. Maybe
there's more in common,
right? So, Richard, if you're ever get an inkling to do some part-time coaching, you let me know. Because he's a badass athlete too, and that's on top of everything else that we're going to talk about today.
Well, relative. I mean, last week you had Alessandra Pacelli on, and she's a badass athlete. I'm an amateur.
She smashed today. So she did class. She did my class today. She smashed the workout today.
She came in early for it.
It's so great. Yeah, she came in, did a 7 a.m. class. She said it was the first time. She goes, "Oh, that was so hard." 7 a.m. class. So great having her in class. Before we get into it, the age group semifinals are officially over. They ended Sunday at noon. Athletes had to do a total of 4 workouts. There were combined 6 scoring opportunities, because 2 of the workouts had additional scoring opportunities. The only challenge was, one of the challenges that was kind of frustrating with the CrossFit Games frustrating from an athlete's point of view was that the leaderboard, we noticed it. So when you do you have to do 2 workouts specifically. They gave us the workouts early, but you had to do 2 of the workouts or submit the results for 2 of the workouts by Saturday. So you had from Friday at noon until Saturday at noon to do 2 of the first 2 workouts. And the way that they managed that was by giving you a password. So they gave you a password that the athlete had to say the password. So that way they knew the only way you could get they could verify that you did it after 12 o'clock on Friday was they didn't give you the password until 12 o'clock on Friday. One of the frustrating things with that is that this year they told the athletes, say the password after the workout.
It's a total shit show.
Which, so you think, you'd think no big deal, but again, now me as going through this process now this weekend, I understand. I don't understand why they did it versus the beginning of the workout, but what I do realize is that they didn't test that process in a real world environment. I feel like they didn't test in a real world environment because what happens as you get going, and like we saw this with Yvonne. You get everything set up. You do all the tape measurements. You do, you show the video angles, all that you're supposed to show. They state their name. They state everything else. And then they start the workout. And at the end of the workout, all you're just watching the time. Do we get the time? Do we count the reps right? Mm-hmm. Do we get the tie break?
Look at this. Yeah. Get the tie, like all the little
little things. And the last thing you think about is a freaking password.
Well, the whole concept of being like WOD drunk too, like
post workout, real.
Like,
well,
you're flopping around on the floor, like the picture video, the video of Yvonne, just like rolling around on the ground, and we're yelling at her across the. She still doesn't even comprehend what we're asking her to do until a few seconds later.
You knew we needed a password. Yeah. I knew we needed a password. I'm sitting behind the cameras, and I'm trying to watch the cameras to make sure. And we're using 2 cameras just in case one camera fails, because you don't want to have to repeat the workout.
Luckily, we did have 2 cameras in some situations too.
Right, because the athlete can move out of frame, and everything else. But we didn't. Jamie knew, I knew, Yvonne knew, and none of us thought to get the password. It was only Beth who was watching as a kind of like she's very OCD, but she's also on the sidelines, and she's watching. She goes, "Say the password, say the password," and that literally, Richard, that was like of the 4 workouts that she had to do, that happened in like 3 of them, 3 of the 4. And so I guarantee you, out of all the masters that did this competition,
I'm curious to know what that number is.
How many people didn't say the password?
Do you think CrossFit will be transparent about that? Because it's a 0.
They said it's supposed to be a 0. It would just be heartbreaking to me. Like after that first workout, which was a long one, 22, 25-minute workout.
Yeah.
To have to redo it,
and all those snatches at the end of it,
and they could have fixed that by just saying at the beginning, when you say your name, say the password.
That's what it was last year.
Because everybody knows. Anybody that does CrossFit knows at the end what it's like. You think you're going to be fine at the end of the workout. I almost hit on that first workout. I almost hit stop the cameras because I wasn't the camera guy, so I'm in charge of cameras.
Yeah. Like they need to add another level of fitness, like flexibility, speed, strength, videography, and password skills.
Yep. I mean, they say there's like
that's good. The 11th skill of fitness.
Well, that's the idea, right? Like you've got the 10 fundamental fitness, like skills of fitness, right? Like the respiratory endurance, flexibility, all that stuff. And then there's the other adaptation that happens between the ears, right? Like the ability to be cognitive enough to like still comprehend and follow through with the tasks, whether it's physical or not.
You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
We want to do, and we'll probably do it with an inter-gym competition. And there is a competition, the death race or something like that.
Was it the death race?
Yeah, where you had to go, you have to solve problems in the middle of your exertion. And that's what we kind of wanted to do something. I think it was called the death race, where they had to, things like they had to go climb the top of a hill. They were shown a Lego construction.
Oh, that's right.
With certain color construction. That's one of our members did. Steve Arntz, I think it was.
Yeah.
Shown a construction. Then they had it, and this is in the middle of the night. This is after like 6 hours of already working.
It's like a 24-hour race or something.
Then they come back down the hill, and all the parts are in a bucket, and they have to build it. And then they show the person at the bottom of the hill, and if they don't get it right, they have to go back up the hill and look at the thing again, and then come back down. So it's like you get this repetition, which I think is awesome.
Sounds like a challenge in like Harry Potter or something like that.
When you say Harry Potter, by the way, it sounds way more official than when I say Harry Potter with that accent.
Well,
Yeah.
obvious reasons. But it's also like the ski biathlon. You know,
Yes.
skiing, you
Which
have to have shooting accuracy as well.
We've actually done that. We had in one of our intramural competitions. We went out and bought some Nerf guns, and we did the ski erg, and we had like a target, and
nice.
like it was a team event. So you had like, if you and I are on our team, I do the ski erg, I go and make my shots. As soon as I'm done with my shots, like that's it. I have to go and collect the balls and try to, if I didn't knock out the target, then it's your turn, and it just goes back and forth as like an AMRAP.
This is gonna tie in nicely to the stuff that you work on and you talk about. But the ski biathlon is something that, in particular, is one of my favorite Olympic events because of the amount of concentration and calmness that it requires in order to. And when they miss and they have to do penalty laps, and then you get someone that comes through and hits, that someone comes in from behind and then hits all 5 targets and then doesn't have to do the penalty lap, and you get this race for the medal.
Yeah.
Because of that ability to stay calm and focus on the task at hand, I think it's awesome. CrossFit did it too at the Rogue
Muscle Up Biathlon.
No. Yeah, they did the Muscle Up Biathlon, but Rogue did it. Remember, Rogue had the air rifles. It was that was the Rogue. That was the Rogue
right.
Invitational.
Yeah, it was Rogue.
That was the Rogue Invitational one year where they had them do the air rifles.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. More of that. But one final thing on the semifinals, Yvonne qualified, and it was a good event. But the scoring,
Scoring was a bit of a shit show.
So the scoring was supposed to be 2 of the workouts included a part B.
50 points.
Yeah, and we're supposed to be so that was new. They said, hey, look, it's only going to get half weighting, and we're going to give it 50 points, which means the regular workouts we're going to get 100 points. Okay, that's cool, because one of them was the snatch test and the other one was the handstand hold. So that way, because those are specialist events, essentially, they were giving them less credit, but also you couldn't get too punished. Like, you might be able to get away with taking a low score on those. Unfortunately, they forgot to tell the leaderboard people this. And so the semifinal leaderboard was ranked based on placement.
Yep. As it always has been.
As it always has been, right? For the open and for everything else. It's always based on placement. So if you get first place, you get 1 point.
The lower the points, the better you are.
The better points. And they decided to change it to the games format, which is where they assign points for each workout.
Was there a particular reason why they did that?
I don't know. Maybe because they had 2 part Bs and they didn't want to punish. They didn't want to give someone 100-point weighting for a handstand hold,
which would have been silly.
Yeah, especially for masters, I think.
Yeah, I have my own thoughts on that one.
At the end,
it should have been like
at the end of the day. Ordinarily, it wouldn't be too big of a deal that that they've got a leaderboard snafu. But in the case of these age group athletes, it was unfortunate because they need to know where they stand day to day to determine how, what their where their focus needs to be for the next day. Like, you need to know, am I way out of this or am I close? And if I'm close, do I redo like Yvonne did that last workout?
Yeah, she did it twice.
Yeah,
20 minutes apart.
And the 4th workout was a 15-minute time cap workout that included burpee box jump overs,
step ups, goblet rack.
Goblet rack, front rack with a kettlebell. First time we've had that front rack with a kettlebell step ups, which are brutal. Yeah, because you just can't use it like you can a dumbbell. And then goblet squats and rope climbs, and then legless rope climbs. She she went out hard. She did really well in the first attempt, and then started failing on her legless rope climbs. Yeah. She finished the workout at 11:15 with 85 reps. And she had gotten 1 of 4 total legless rope climbs. We had to make kind of a game day decision. Yeah. What does she do? Like, is that score going to punish her? Because she was, possibly bumped out of the top 10. Like, and the girls in her age group are good.
Yeah.
And she rested 15 minutes about.
Did some voodoo flossing, some
Yeah.
foam rolling, just kind of get some blood back into the system. Just kind
Yeah,
of flush out
15
some
minutes
of that
and
byproduct.
started with the burpee box jump overs, 20 burpee box jump overs, those step ups again.
Yeah.
Rope climb. She did the first set of rope climbs great. She was only about 30 seconds off her pace from the first time. We were a little bit worried. Beth and I were a little bit worried
from the tiebreaker standpoint.
Yeah, we're like, oh man, because her tiebreaker is going to be less.
Yeah.
But that slower time and her more methodical pace.
I think the rope had a little bit to do with it too.
And then we used an older rope because the newer ropes are slick.
Well, I think for future reference and anybody else out there that's listening, like if you're doing rope climbs on a brand new rope, there's definitely some stretch and give to it.
Oh, that's right.
And I think that's what really happened, because when you watched her doing the legless rope climbs, she was spinning like crazy because that rope, it's a newer rope. She just really liked that space because she smashed the legless rope climb workout last year.
Right.
But it's also like that rope has been removed like 8 or 9 times by now since last year.
Yeah. So we put a new rope in there like 2 weeks ago, and it's slicker, it stretches, so she couldn't. It was harder. But anyway, we put her on a different rope, and we went at a different pace, and she ended up adding like 25 more reps.
Yeah.
That's
which is
amazing.
crucial.
Oh, it was, dude. It's 60 years old.
In half an hour,
right?
It's 60 years old.
I would even say a half hour. I would say like 20 minutes. I remember watching the clock, and I'm like, oh fuck, this is gonna be the most stressful 5 minutes just to get the score submitted before the deadline. Because she finished it within a 5-minute window.
So we decided, Kim and I decided during the workout to submit her last score
just as a backup.
Just in case there was a screw up or for some reason she didn't make it. So we submitted it, had that in. And then I said at 5 minutes till, when it looks like she's ahead, let's delete that score and start the score entry for the new score, which we did. We deleted the score and we filled in all the stuff. As soon as she's done, boom, we put the date in, and then we sent the video afterwards. Yeah, which is good that CrossFit allows us to do that, because you can't possibly upload that video in time.
No,
but it was she last night she said, thank you for everything, appreciate it. And I said, look, that's like, it was so worth it, because that's like a defining moment in your CrossFit career. Like that's an epic moment
to be able to come back from that kind of adversity, though. Like,
right.
I mean, we're in, like, in my opinion, I think this is like the worst stage of the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said, you don't know where everybody's at from day to day. It's an in-person competition. Everybody's dealing with the same situation,
right.
Same warm-up environment, same competition floor, same equipment. And you can see physically where they are on the field, if you can push the gas or not. With this environment, it's purely just like,
and arguably one of the hardest workouts. I watched 100%. Alessandra do that workout 2 days before.
She did. She said it was like, that was rough.
Yeah, she said it was rough. Yeah. Anyway,
which says a lot.
Well, it makes me think of like what David Goggins said. He's like, most people push themselves to about 40% of their capacity.
Yeah,
they've still got so much left.
That's a really good point.
And Yvonne, obviously, it just had so many reserves that she could tap into that second attempt.
Yeah. That is right. I mean, there's that save a life gear.
Well, she's always been really good under pressure too.
She is good under pressure. When we told her, hey, you got to redo it, I was like, I saw the look in her face, oof, and she's just like, okay.
Yep. Let me tape up my fingers, because she slid down some of the rope a few times.
I know, her hands were killing her.
How are they doing right now?
Her last night. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So let's talk. I want to talk to Richard, because Richard has some tools that can help all of us. And in particular, I'm most interested in it. I've been geeking out on it a little bit prior to Richard, which is why I wanted to have him on this podcast, is using breathing techniques to manage stress, manage anxiety, manage pain. I started cold plunging. I did a little bit last year, but I started plunging again this year. And at first, when I started cold plunging, I didn't really pay attention. They said I've read all the Hoffman stuff, about the breathing. I just didn't really pay attention to it. I was just like, oh, get this over with. But then I started paying attention to it, and I realized that when I was easing myself in and able to stay in there for longer periods of time more comfortably, I realized it was like, oh, I was breathing much better. And then I saw that Huberman post the other day too that talked about it. There's now clinical data. I'm sure there's a lot more. Richard will tell us. So there's probably a lot more data that demonstrates that breathing has the ability to substantially affect mood and and anxiety, and it's data supported protocol. So the post is, for those that are listening and not watching, it says a brief data supported protocol for reducing stress and improving mood around the clock is 5 minutes a day of physiological sighing, which part of me is like, okay, well then my daughter ought to be really good at this because
yeah, I mean that probably is
right.
an emotional regulation strategy. She's frustrated, so she's letting it out rather than holding it in, and that like sigh is a way of regulating the nervous system. And as well, when you just went like you vibrated, that is increasing vagal nerve tone. The vagus nerve is the one that travels from the brain down to the gut and sort of helps us regulate our own nervous system, and vibrating it is one way to increase its tolerance for stress.
Right.
Interesting.
So she's a wise sire.
She's on it.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes a day of physiological sighing, which equals a max inhale via the nose, and then another short nasal inhale, and then a full exhale to the lungs to empty the mouth, and repeat it for 5 minutes. This is what's cool. This outperformed 5 minutes a day of meditation and other breathing protocols. And then there's some data that's showing that it's even better than using medications for relief, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I have some ideas about why in this particular study it came across as more effective than meditation. Meditation is really effective. I do it. I don't teach it because I think breath work is more effective, and there's more room to grow with breath work. So meditation for people who have PTSD, it's not actually good because they can't focus on their internal world. They get distracted. They get scared and frustrated. And a lot more people have PTSD than we realize. PTSD used to be something only reserved for military veterans or car crashes or things like that. But actually, new studies are showing like about 70% of people have trauma, unprocessed trauma, and 90% of people in behavioral health, so anyone who's seeking therapy, has trauma. And a lot of trauma just gets like swept under the carpet or brushed in with other conditions, mental health conditions and physical health conditions. And as a treatment target, it is being completely like ignored. No one really wants to address trauma as a cause of anxiety. People want to, just numb symptoms or just treat symptoms. And the breath work in particular that I am about to do my PhD research on has had a fair bit of trials on curing PTSD. It's actually shown to resolve symptoms of PTSD. And in relation to Huberman's meditation study there, he is talking about I would say it's more like symptom management, what he's doing there. It's more like 5 minutes just to keep you going. Whereas the research I'm actually proposing, designing at the moment, is going to be going and seeing if we can actually cure people's mental health issues from what's causing them rather than just managing. This is great. It's great to be able to manage stress, but also it'd be nice to know what's actually causing people's chronic anxiety and chronic depression and things like that.
How much of it do you think is the explosion in media devices and then the related content that has accompanied that? So since the invention of the iPhone and the iPad and having the ability to have screens in front of us. So, I just don't remember this being as big an issue. And when I was in high school and college, like you're talking to a guy that graduated high school in 1980, graduated college in 1984. It just, this wasn't a thing. And now it's, my daughter deals with it. She's 19. Many parents here and their kids deal with it. And I think you're right about the PTSD but we're not going to war. We're not, you know what I mean? So like, what is it that's creating this situation? Is it those screens?
Well, I certainly had depression, anxiety long before screens came along, and a lot of other people have. There's so many different causes of anxiety. There's trauma, one, which is sort of an underappreciated one. That's why I'm sort of banging the drum about it. There's diet, there's lack of sunlight, there's stressful events in your life, like pandemics and things
Mhm.
cause anxiety.
Yeah.
Climate anxiety, all
Yeah.
these things can cause it. Phones, I think, can the main theory behind why that might be causing problems, I think, is dopamine. You know, it's just like, I don't know if you've read Dopamine Nation, Andrew Huberman always talks about it, but it's basically just dopamine on tap. And then when you haven't got any dopamine left, you feel anxious. So if you've depleted all your dopamine from scrolling the news, scrolling Instagram, gaming, whatever it is, cocaine, alcohol, all chocolate, all these things, shopping, gambling, all these things just deplete dopamine. And then when you haven't got any left, you're just going to be anxious. So I would say that the phone is not causing it, but it's just another thing that's readily available.
Just adding to the
deplete
like
us.
fuel for the fire, essentially.
Exactly. It's like with gambling, you know, gambling doesn't like create gambling addicts, but if people want to gamble,
Yeah.
they'll go and gamble. But if it's just right there in front of them all the time, they're going to gamble more. It's like that Alcoholics Anonymous saying, if you don't want to slip, don't go where it's slippery.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the depletion of dopamine can lead to the anxiety and then depression as well. Related to that?
Yeah, I think so. Depression is a little bit more complicated than anxiety because it's you know, it's more like a chronic thing. It could go brain changes in various different ways. But I'm sure, yeah, just that low mood, probably because you've depleted your dopamine, can certainly be caused by social media and other things.
What led you to think about breath work as a way to disintermediate this process?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I had anxiety, depression, and eating disorder for a long time. I'd done a lot of talk therapy, and I kind of got stabilized, but I hadn't really. I was still having a lot of problems, still having an eating disorder and things like that. And my therapist said to me, like, I notice you hold your breath a lot, or you take big sighs, and your breathing is quite dysregulated. Why don't you go see this guy I know? He's called the Breath Guru. His name's Alan Dolan. And so I showed up for a session with him, just thinking he was going to sort of like teach me how to breathe, or to, you know, some sighing or something like that. But then he taught me this breath work technique. It's called conscious connected breath work. That's kind of the umbrella term for a lot of schools of this breath work. The most famous one is holotropic breath work, created by Stan Grof. There's transformational breath work, shamanic breath work, clarity breath work, therapeutic breath work. And what these things do is basically breathing through the mouth to start, which, you know, if you've listened to Huberman and things like that, I'll say never breathe through your mouth. But when you're doing something like Wim Hof, you're trying to alter your state of consciousness, breathing through the mouth is actually useful in that context. So he had me sort of lie down on the couch, taught me this breathwork technique. And then for about 40 minutes, I was doing this breathwork technique. And after what felt like, I don't know, time stopped existing, I came back from another realm. And I was just like, I just looked at him like, where am I? Where have I been? Where did I go? And I immediately text my wife, Natalia, and was like, oh my God, you've got to try this breath work. I booked her in the next day. A few months later, we were training with him. Natalia now works for him. I'm now doing a PhD in this breathwork research, in this breathwork method. And it's basically, it's akin to a psychedelic journey. Some people say that, I mentioned yesterday, your body releases its own exogenous DMT. DMT is the active ingredient in ayahuasca, and certainly in Wim Hof, people seem to report, you know, seeing visions in their third eye. This is where the DMT would get released from the pineal gland, in theory. And also in this breathwork, conscious connected breathwork, you can also have these non-ordinary states of consciousness, spiritual experiences, mystical experiences. And very recently, some researchers put some people into an fMRI and had them do this breathwork, and they showed very, very similar changes to people on psychedelic trips. And why is that good for mental health? Just having a psychedelic trip, you might think, oh, you know, people just, you know, off with the fairies or wasting their time getting high. But actually, there's a big correlation between mystical experiences and improved mental health outcomes. And it doesn't necessarily matter how they come. So near-death experiences, a lot of people have near-death experiences and they meet ancestors, godlike figures, and then they come back and they're fundamentally changed in some positive way. They're happier, their depression's gone, they have connection to their friends and family. Same with ayahuasca, same with psilocybin, same with breath work. If you can elicit a mystical experience, mental health outcomes are improved.
It's almost like an ego dissolving situation, right? Where you're going through that and then it's like you forget about the little things.
Yeah, that's one theory. Yeah, Michael Poglan talks about that. It's
Yeah.
almost like a reboot,
Yeah.
turning the computer off again, resetting neurotransmitters, resetting neural pathways, and then
The whole default mode network and everything.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that is another area of the brain that was shown to be downregulated in this breath work. So the default mode network, or the DMN, is where it's kind of where we think our idea of self comes from. And so if you have negative messages like I'm a loser, I'm an addict, I am depressed, all these like subconscious messages, if I just say to someone, you're not a loser, you're not an addict, like they're just going to bat it away.
Mhm.
Prefrontal cortex just goes, no, critical thinking, I am all these things. When you downregulate the DMN, these messages of like, oh no, I am actually okay, I'm not as bad as I think I am, we can reset our sense of self, and that can really change
Mhm.
our depression, anxiety, addiction, all those kinds of things.
That's fascinating as hell. Back to the topic of using the hallucinogens for making long-term mental health changes. There's a lot of discussion around the DMT. There's a lot the psilocybin,
MDMA.
Yeah, MDMA. The use of those things in either micro doses, or even going out and having what do they call it? Assisted experience. Yeah, well, where someone's there with you.
Yeah.
And gives you the full experience, and it is alleviated, PTSD and then what I've wondered, this is the thing, and I've wondered is like in your explanation there with respect to breathing, just kind of explained it. The most I've heard it explained is, what is it that's causing that? Like why is just having a hallucinogenic experience, fixing problems? I want to know, what's the mechanics there? Did it go in and reprogram that? And do you have to have a certain type of hallucinogenic experience in order to accomplish that, and how much? And does microdosing work versus doing a regular full? And if you can do it through breath work, that's even more amazing. But do we know, or do people know what that actual connection is, that process that's happening, that's creating that improvement?
So your question is, what is it about the mystical experience that
Yes.
creates the improvement? So I think there's
but much better said than I did, by the way.
So I think there are many mechanisms of action with these things. I think just having a connection to something bigger, a higher being, or whatever it is, planet Earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of like a containing myth. I don't know if you heard of Jung's idea of the containing myth, but we don't really have a containing myth anymore. The idea used to be that Christianity was our containing myth. You go to heaven and hell, and there was a big guy with a beard up in the sky, and a guy with a pokey stick down below us. Now we don't have that. We have late stage capitalism as our containing myth, and that if you are successful, you'll be happy. But that doesn't necessarily play out for a lot of people. And so I think having a connection in the mystical experience to something bigger than just what's going on in our world right now gives us, it's almost like a hand in the back, almost like there is some sort of support there. There is, I'm not just a useless individual doing nothing in the world. I have support from ancestors, guides, God, whatever it is in your spiritual beliefs. I just think that makes such a big difference. And I do quote this in my PhD proposal, but there is a direct correlation between anxiety and spiritual well-being, i.e. how spiritual a person feels. It doesn't matter what religion, but the more connection they have to their spirituality, the lower their anxiety is.
Interesting. And then it helps you understand the development and expansion of religion as by our ancestors.
Oh yeah.
Right. If you it's a way of explaining why things are happening, and gives you a sense of comfort that, should I die? Part of the problem of being self-aware is that you're also self-aware that you might die. or that you might get eaten, or that something's going to hurt. My dog doesn't, run out into the street thinking I might get hit by a car, dumbass. I don't run in the street because I might get hit by a car, and that creates a certain amount of fear, a certain amount of anxiety, and that's tempered by, what, if I get hit by a car, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go to heaven, see my maker, and everything's gonna be great. So like that helps bring down that kind of that anxiety, that fear of taking risks, the fear of the fear and anxieties that we stack upon ourselves in daily life. And so you can understand how our ancestors maybe developed religion almost as a tool, but there's a way to explain things, but also as a tool to help manage it. It worked effectively. Either that, or we evolved into it as a result of having religion. One of the two, but either way, that's a fascinating explanation of why this stuff may work. So then we get all the way back to breathing. How can breathing trigger this hallucinogenic experience, and this, kind of same thing that MDMA and psilocybins and all the other things promise to give us?
Yeah. So MDMA is not a hallucinogen. It's more of I call it an empathogen. So that is something like the way that would work is it makes you feel, really boosts serotonin. You feel great love. You feel safe, and in that state, in the right environment, you can go and reprocess traumatic memories when you are feeling safe. Because this is a big problem with PTSD, is people are just so highly strung, so like in fear, they cannot process their traumas, can't process their emotions. And this is it's an adaptive response. It's become a maladaptive response. So when you're running away from a tiger, or you're in war, you're running away from a threat, you don't want to be processing emotions, you don't want to be crying, you don't want to be feeling your feelings, you want to be getting to safety. And normally when that happens, the body releases what Peter Levine would call survival energy. You've taken a deep breath and you liberate all this survival energy to get yourself to safety.
Right.
The nervous system goes right up into sympathetic, and you use that to run away from the tiger, etc. Then when you get to safety, your body should finish that response. It should discharge a lot of that energy. So when you see a deer shaking after it's just been running away from escaped a lion, that's discharging survival energy. It is the same with like dogs after a fight, they'll be shaking. That's discharging survival energy. Children do that a lot as well. But then society for some reason says, no, stop shaking, don't discharge that, because we feel uncomfortable with it. We think it's it's not helpful, but it is helpful to discharge that. And then the nervous system just gets stuck in sympathetic. And this is the idea that trauma gets stuck in the nervous system rather than in the brain. And that's why talk therapy won't do anything for someone with trauma, because there's also another thing. Basically, the memories get stuck as procedural memories rather than episodic memories in the brain. And we need to reprocess them so that they can just go into episodic memories. So there's a variety of ways of how trauma gets stuck in the body, and a variety of reasons why talk-based therapy, CBT, has such poor results for people with PTSD and has such high relapse rates as well. So the way breath work.
CBT, by the way, for anyone that's not familiar with it, is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is super common today.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm not a fan of it. It's better than nothing, but
Yeah.
I think there are better things out there, and they're coming. I think breath work is a better thing. And mindfulness meditation for a lot of people is better. Psychedelic assisted therapies are better. So the way breath work works is, one is healing traumas, and then two, it's creating these mystical experiences. And I think the way it's doing that is, so when you're doing this breath work, you are blowing off a lot of your carbon dioxide. And if you've listened to the Huberman, when you talk about blowing off carbon dioxide, areas of the brain get downregulated. So the prefrontal cortex gets downregulated, doesn't get enough oxygen. And the prefrontal cortex is the last part of our brain which evolved, and that's sort of involved in like higher thinking. And one of its job is to like suppress our emotions, to stop us from feeling pain. And I think so many people, I know so many people, research shows so many people are anxious because they're just not processing their emotions. They're just suppressing their emotions, and that causes anxiety. It's got maladaptive emotion regulation strategies. suppression, avoidance are two of these strategies. And what breath work does is down regulates that part that's suppressing. So these emotions just pop up. And then this is what happens in breathwork sessions is people just spontaneously crying, spontaneously like thinking about things that they'd not thought about for years, and things that were just stuck in their memory, stuck in their body. And that's kind of what breathwork does, is it helps you, what conscious connected breathwork does is it helps you regulate your emotions, feel your feelings, whereas other things like CBT is just, again, I feel like it's just symptom management rather than going to the cause of things.
How long are these, would a typical breathwork session be to help, or that would it result in an outcome like you're talking about?
Yeah, so the actual breathing itself, I actually taught a workshop a few weeks ago, and I was just going to do like a trial, a taster, because I was giving a talk on it,
right?
Like for my PhD, and I only did 15 minutes, and people came back like there were people shaking, there were people crying, there was a woman who met her ancestors, and I was like, oh my god, I cannot believe this happens in 15 minutes, because normally I would do like 40 minutes to an hour.
Right.
Some holotropic does like 2 hours.
Oh wow!
But just for some people who are just ready to go, 10 minutes. And all these things come
a lot
up.
of stuff already boiling under the surface, really.
Yeah, for sure. And it obviously is not going to work for everyone. There are certain people who it's not perfect for. They'll need other therapies. But for some people, they go off into other worlds within 10 minutes.
It's wild.
What about versus traditional meditation, where you're doing the chanting and then, trying to clear your mind? I've always, for this group, I've always had, I've tried meditation before. I just can't sit still for it and stay and clear my mind. I get too distracted and I get antsy, and then I want to go do something. Like it's very difficult for me. I'd rather be skiing or, doing something, jogging, running, walking, where I'm like, and then my mind clears that way. But is there a difference between, say, meditation where you're doing the chanting, or is that the same thing as the deep breathing exercises?
Yeah, so again, it's very different. I'd say the meditation is about regulating the nervous system for one thing, whereas the breathwork I'm researching is upregulating the nervous system. We're sending people back up into that sympathetic state that maybe they got stuck in, so they can complete their process and go back into the parasympathetic. I do think meditation is really useful, especially for people with like ADHD, and to help to get to know the body and to help tolerate more stress. But yeah, this type of breath work has been called by, I think, the Washington something Post, maybe they call it breath work for people who can't, meditation for people who cannot meditate.
Oh, okay.
Some people just can't sit still.
Right.
Whereas breath work like Wim Hof, Soma breath, transformational breath, these things, they're active. You're doing something. And especially if you're doing conscious connected breath work, I say transformational, that's a brand of conscious connected breath work, you'll have a coach with you, because it's very difficult to do on your own, especially at first, because there's so many different like moving parts in this breathwork technique that you need to be on top of to elicit that response, elicit the transient hyperfrontality. That transient hyperfrontality is the when I mentioned earlier, the down regulation of the prefrontal cortex. That's called transient hyperfrontality. So yeah, breathwork is active, whereas the meditation is passive. So for a lot of people, they find breathwork a lot easier.
I've used it. I've done I've noticed when I cold plunge now, and that was, some of the Wim Hof stuff, that if I just focusing on my breathing first, when you get into the first time you get into cold plunge, you got short, shallow breaths, and I forced myself to take bigger, longer breaths, deeper exhales, and literally within 10 to 15 seconds, I've instantly forgotten about the cold sensation, the sharp cold sensation. I don't want to say it's pain. It's not really pain as much as just cold, sharp sensation on my skin that's forced me to want to get out. Like I instantly forget about it. And then what's interesting is too, is I get into almost a meditative state where my mind clears, and now I'm just focusing on the breathing. I'm focusing on the breathing. And if I stop and kind of like, snap myself out of it, all of a sudden it feels cold again. But it's a fascinating thing. Is there any thoughts to that deep breathing also being able to be used for things like pain management.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, cold exposure is pain management, and
Right.
in a way, in that you're deliberately stressing your body. You know, it's a hormetic stressor. That idea of hormesis, like a mild stress elicits an overcompensation from the body. So, you know, too much cold, too much ice baths, you know, it's hypothermia, and you know, you're Jack on the Titanic or in the ocean and you don't live. Same with like saunas, and same with exercise. You know, too much heat and you die of dehydration, but a little bit of sauna, the body overcompensates, and that's the idea of hormesis. And similarly with breath work and breath holds, it's a hormetic stress. You know, too much breath holds and it's suffocation. A little bit, your body overcompensates. So specifically with ice baths, your body is overcompensating with dopamine. And, you know, we talked earlier about dopamine in terms of social media and things like that. So in Dopamine Nation, they talk about the sort of the seesaw of pain and dopamine. So your body will give you dopamine after you do something difficult or hard.
Yes.
So your body gives you dopamine after an ice bath. Your body, if you've had something on your to-do list for 6 months and you've been putting it off, and you do it after, you feel amazing because your body's rewarded you with dopamine because you did something hard. It doesn't have to be objectively hard. It just has to be something you don't want to do. So hence your to-do list, you know, whatever it is, like, you know, washing the car. If that's really difficult for you and then you do it, you'll get a much bigger dopamine release than someone who likes washing their car. And then the reverse of the seesaw is, if you get dopamine without pain, your body corrects the other way and gives you pain. So when you're getting dopamine from porn, social media, your body reacts a few hours later with making you feel anxious, making you feel depressed.
Oh, fascinating. So, okay.
And then so for strategies with ice baths, so ice baths, norepinephrine and dopamine, those are the two neurotransmitters.
Right.
Yeah, norepinephrine's the adrenal. That's the, you know, thing that makes you want to go and crush a workout or do your to-do list afterwards. And so strategies for that. And another reason why ice baths are so good is because it's helping you to tolerate extreme states. It's helping you to you know, calm yourself under stress, because we'll all have sort of different windows of tolerance for stress. And I always think of the Ryan Gosling movie where he's the astronaut Neil Armstrong, and the opening scene, or one of the opening scenes, is Neil Armstrong flying a jet, and he's going to crash soon, and everyone's telling him to like bail out, and the average pilot would probably just be freaking out and just ejecting right away. But he has such a high window of tolerance for stress that despite all these noises and pressure on his body, he manages to like save the plane and land it calmly.
Right.
Hence why he was the first man on the moon, because he has an absolutely enormous window of tolerance for stress. And we can train our windows of tolerance for stress by doing stressful things like sauna, hard exercise, ice baths. And yeah, with ice baths, what happens is you go in, if it's cold enough, you get that shock, you get that that initial like, oh my God, what am I doing? I shouldn't be here. And you get that what's called the mammalian dive reflex, that big inhale, which kickstarts a lot of immune functions. But then also, you know, the prefrontal cortex goes offline, and it's sort of the more reptilian parts of the brain start to take over and be like, oh no, we need to get out of here. And this is what comes to what Andrew Huberman calls limbic friction, where the limbic system is rubbing against the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system being the sort of let's get to safety, and the prefrontal cortex being the sort of the higher self saying, no, this is going to be really good for us. And the more you can have the prefrontal cortex making decisions for your life, the better your life is going to be.
That's fascinating as hell. What about so there's there's a couple levels here I want to go to in terms of now learning these techniques and, you know, where I learn them. And I guess what I'll do is just ask you both questions together. So one is like, how do I learn it so that I can do it myself? And then two, is this something that we can teach our kids? And are there ways to teach our kids how to do these things?
Do you mean in relation to ice baths or
no, just in terms of, no, I think I'm more interested in, you know, ice baths great, you know, but I'm talking more in terms of managing and reducing anxiety and stress. And by kids, I mean kids that I would say aged 5 and up. Is there a way to teach these kids how to do it? And then where would I and where would anybody else, and where would the people who are going to listen to this, where would they learn how to use these techniques to their advantage?
Yeah, absolutely. You can use it for kids. There's a charity in the UK called Schools Breathe who are sort of teaching school teachers breath work so that they can teach their kids
Oh, that's cool.
breath work, so they can start their day with a bit of meditation, because as we said, breath work is sort of easier than meditation for people who can't sit still. Kids find breath work easier than the meditation.
Yeah, for sure.
Then in terms of finding it yourself, there's so many different types of breath work. So the most famous one would be Wim Hof, and you can just go on YouTube and do like a 20-minute tutorial with Wim Hof and learn how to do that on your own. The technique I teach, you need a coach because you can't really learn it for yourself. You just, is
it like a matter of like timing and stuff like that?
Yeah,
and
so
like
there's various
pushing
things. Various things in, like, you have to surrender your exhale. You have to connect your breath. It's what I call conscious connected breathing, because you're removing the pauses on between your inhale and your exhale. I've been doing this for years, and I still need coaching sometimes, because when you go into that unconscious state, you can't keep it going. So to do that, you would need to go to a workshop, and there's workshops in the Bay Area, but workshops all around the world. There's workshops online, and traditionally it's been done in person, but one of the things that makes my research unique is that I'm going to be the first person to do it online, to test whether or not it works online, because during the pandemic, obviously no one could do it in person. And so a lot of people had to switch online, and a lot of people, me included, had amazing results with clients. So we would now want to validate this scientifically to say, like, hey, no, it works online just as well as in person. So to find it, I would say Breath Guru would be my first port of call. He's UK based. He's my mentor. You can work one-to-one with him. He does workshops. Then Clarity Breathwork is another school. They're sort of based in the Bay Area and Hawaii. They do teacher trainings. And then if you want a breathwork just to try on your own, I would recommend Soma Breathwork, SOMA. That's created by Niraj Naik. And I've trained with him. And that's something you can do every day. That's like a 20-minute. It's kind of like it's like Wim Hof, but slightly different, and it's got good music and things like that. I also love Wim Hof. Give Wim Hof a try. It's just like restaurants, people have different flavors of food they like. There's different breath works for different people and for different sort of moods as well. And yeah, what else was I going to say?
And for kids.
Yeah, kids.
Yeah, what was that kids program you said in the UK?
Schools Breathe. So that is
Schools
something
Breathe,
that they're teaching teachers. But for kids, I think you probably could just do Soma breathwork and things like that. SOMA. They're on YouTube. And my mentor, Breath Guru, he's had babies. He's breathed like young children. But again, that's quite like an involved process compared to just self-regulation. There's a cool device called Moonbird that I'm an ambassador for. It's this handheld. It's like, I don't know, it looks like it's like moon shaped, and it's sort of silicone, and it expands and contracts. So for someone who I had a deaf client, a hard of hearing client recently, he can't do breath work because he can't hear, but the Moonbird is great for him because it's just touch. It expands and closes in line with the breathing rhythm.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like tactile cueing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And also that device has a HRV and heart monitor on it as well. So you can see in real time when I'm doing this breath work, my HRV goes up, which is good, and my heart rate goes down.
What's that called again?
Moonbird.
I
think I have a discount if you go to breathgeek.com.
I think about so many kids, so many parents tell me this, that just our members here, their kids that are suffering from anxiety, and stress-related anxiety, school-related anxiety, and social media and bullying and all the other things that drive it. Like, just having a tool like this, I'm thinking already for my daughter. I'm gonna, when I go home today, I'm gonna spend time with my daughter and talk to her about this. is I want her to have a mechanism when she has an anxiety attack in particular. She's like once every couple of months she'll have an anxiety attack. It's it's kind of scary. And I think a lot of people think, well, just get over it. And that's what was my first response. I remember her telling me, you can't just tell me to get over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the classic
Yeah.
dad response. Just get over it. Just go for a walk. And she's like, you just can't tell me like it's, and so to give her a tool that can help her, bring her heart rate down, improve her heart rate variability, and then at the same time alleviate that anxiety, like instantly, and then maybe even long term prevent it altogether, is without having to use medication or have her spend an hour talking to her therapist. This would be really freaking cool.
Yeah.
And I think and I definitely, just in my experience with the cold plunge and breathing, I know there's a connection there. Right? There's something happening there
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Strategies for when anxiety gets really extreme. You may have heard this already on the Hoopman podcast, but carbon dioxide is involved in panic attacks. When they give people just pure carbon dioxide to breathe, they have a panic attack. So a lot of times what can happen when someone gets close to panic attack and has panic disorder, they're over breathing. They're like,
Right.
They're
Yeah.
hyperventilating. They are not breathing correctly. So what we think there is like, oh, take deep breaths, take deep breaths. That's not a good strategy because they're already taking deep breaths.
Yeah.
And they're over breathing and they're breathing off all their carbon dioxide. And this comes through to the work of the Buteyko Clinic and Patrick McEwen, who does a lot of work with like functional breathing. And his first book was called The Oxygen Advantage, but he says he wished he changed it to the carbon dioxide advantage, because carbon dioxide we just think is a waste product, but actually it's really important in breathing. And there's this thing called the Bohr effect. And basically it's when our blood has carbon dioxide present in it, the blood will release oxygen through to the cells. But if you have like 100% blood oxygen saturation, the blood won't release any oxygen.
Right.
So you think if I breathe loads, I'll get more oxygen, but no, the blood holds on to it. So that's why carbon dioxide training, especially for like athletes as well, is really useful. Becoming carbon dioxide tolerant is an advantage in athletics and in life. So going back to panic disorders, when someone is maybe starting to over breathe like that, what you can do is give them a brown paper bag, because what are they doing there? They are breathing back in their carbon dioxide. If you don't have a carbon bag, you can just tell them, put their hands over their face, breathe back in their carbon dioxide from within their hands.
Remember the paper bag? Remember
I was just going to say
like our parents kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Back in the day, the whole paper bag breathing.
Ahead of the time.
You'd never see that anymore.
I've tried it actually. I've done it with Cameron.
And I'm wondering what the mechanism there was. Like I always thought that's the stupidest.
Here you go.
Fucking thing. And there you go.
Yeah. And slowing their breathing as well.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll be over breathing. The pace of breathing will be too high. And if you can get them to breathe through their nose, which is going to slow it down because there's more resistance through the nose, that's also going to help them calm down.
Wow.
Oh man, that's so
nice
good.
to put something behind that.
Yeah, this is great. Cool. We've gone an hour.
Yeah.
Kind of where we like to be. What about so what do you do clinics now? Do you do one-on-one stuff? What do you do now with respect to your breath work? And is there something we should be referring people to?
Is there a good spot on this you want me to pull up?
So I'm not taking on clients at the moment because I'm full-time with my PhD.
Okay.
I will be conducting a trial where I'll need clients. I need to get 100 people or something like that. I do put out information on Instagram at the Breath Geek. I talk about the latest research and biohacking and things like that, and as a kind of educational aspect to it. Once I finish my PhD, I'll probably be opening up a breathwork clinic, teacher training school, that kind of thing. But for right now, you can just follow me, and if you want breathwork itself, message me. I can send recommendations. If you're looking for workshops in the UK, Breath Guru would be my go-to, and then in the US, Clarity Breathwork would be the one I would look to there.
Clarity Breathwork.
if you see him here at Diablo, wait until the MetCon is done and then ask him where you can get more information and more help. This is outstanding. Really cool. Oh, by the way, when you need test subjects, I guarantee you here at this community, there'll be a large number of people that want to help. I'm interested too. I think
you have to have mild to severe anxiety.
I can.
Can you conjure that one up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please don't fake it.
There are members here. I do know there's members here that deal with chronic anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're gonna dig this podcast.
Great.
And I know they'll be listening to it. So, and they'll probably be reaching out. So
awesome.
Right on.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. This was a great discussion. Anything else we want to talk about today?
No.
Okay.
We're good.
It's good. All right.
Thank you
We'll
very
see everybody
much.
next week. Thanks, man.
Until next time.
Yep.
Bye-bye.